Marion Hugh Knight Jr., better known as Suge Knight, born April 19, 1965, is the founder and CEO of Black Kapital Records and co-founder and former CEO of Death Row Records. He had many nicknames, such as Suge. Death Row Records rose to dominate the rap charts after Dr. Dre's breakthrough album The Chronic in 1992. After several years of chart successes for artists including Tupac Shakur, Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Outlawz and Dog's Pound, Death Row Records stagnated after Knight's incarceration on parole violation charges in September 1996. Contents: Early life. Marion, Suge, Hugh Knight was born in Compton, California. His nickname, Suge, derives from Sugar Bear, a childhood nickname. He attended Linwood High School in nearby Linwood, California, where he was a football and track star, graduating in 1983. From 1983 to 1985, he attended El Camino College on a football scholarship. In 1985, he transferred to the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and played there for 2 years. After college, Knight did not get drafted by an NFL team, but was cut during training camp by the Los Angeles Rams. However, he became a replacement player during the 1987 NFL players' strike, and playing 2 games for the Rams. Later, he found work as a concert promoter and a bodyguard for celebrities including Bobby Brown. Knight was arrested in October 1987 for domestic violence. He assaulted his girlfriend and cut off her ponytail on the street. On Halloween night 1987, Knight was arrested in Las Vegas for auto theft, carrying a concealed weapon and attempted murder. He had allegedly shot a man 3 times while stealing his car. He pled guilty to a misdemeanor charge and received 2 years probation. 2 years later, Knight formed his own music publishing company. His first big profit in the business came when Vanilla Ice, Robert Van Winkle, agreed to sign over royalties from Van Winkle's smash hit Ice Ice Baby, because the song included material written by Knight's client Floyd Earthquake Brown. Knight and his bodyguards confronted Van Winkle several times. According to Van Winkle, on one occasion Knight took him out on the balcony of a hotel room, and implied that he would throw Van Winkle off the balcony, unless he signed the publishing rights to the song over to Knight, which Van Winkle did. Knight used Van Winkle's money to help fund Death Row Records. The claim was resolved in court. Knight next formed an artist management company, and signed prominent West Coast hip-hop artists the DOC and DJ Quick. Through the former, he met several members of the seminal gangster rap group NWA. In 1991, Knight had a son, Taj, who was said to be living in Atlanta with his mother, Davina Barnes. In 1993, a second son, Andrew, was born on April 19, Knight's birthday. Andrew now lives in the greater Los Angeles as well as his mother, Shia. Knight also has daughters named Posh and Bailey, the latter with R&B singer Mitchell. Death Row Records. Dr. Dre and the DOC wanted to leave both NWA and their label, Ruthless Records, run by Eazy-E, another member of NWA. According to NWA''s manager Jerry Heller, Knight and his henchmen, aka the Hebrew Hammer, threatened Heller and Eazy-E with lead pipes and baseball bats to make them release Dre, the DOC, and Mitchell from their contracts. Ultimately, Dre and Doc co-founded Death Row Records in 1991 with Knight, who vowed to make it the Motown of the 90s. Initially, Knight fulfilled his ambitions. He secured a distribution deal with Interscope, and Dre's 1992 solo debut, The Chronic, has sold over 3 million copies. It also made a career for Dre's protege, Snoop Dogg, whose debut album Doggy Style was another multi-platinum album. Meanwhile, Death Row had begun a public feud with 2 Live Crew's Luther Campbell, and when Knight traveled to Miami for a hip-hop convention in 1993, he was apparently seen openly carrying a stolen gun. The following year, he opened a private, by-appointment-only nightclub in Las Vegas called Club 662, so named because the numbers spelled out MOB, which stands for Money Over Bitches, on telephone keypads. In 1995, he ran afoul of activist C. Delores Tucker, whose criticism of Death Row's glamorization of the gangster lifestyle may have helped scuttle a lucrative deal with Time Warner. Addition of Tupac Shakur and MC Hammer. Knight's feud with East Coast impresario Sean Combs, known as Puff Daddy at the time, progressed when Knight insulted the Bad Boy label founder on air at the Source Awards in August 1995. Openly critical of Combs's tendency of ad-libbing on his artists' songs and dancing in their videos, Knight announced to the audience, "Anyone out there who wanna be a recording artist and wanna stay a star, but don't have to worry about the executive producer trying to be all in the videos, all on the records, dancing, come to Death Row." The same year, Knight offered to post a bail, $1.4 million, for Tupac Shakur, if the troubled rapper agreed to sign with Death Row. Shakur agreed, setting the stage for his 1996 double album All Eyes on Me, and the songs California Love, and How Do You Want It. MC Hammer's, Stanley Kirk Burrell, relationship with Suge Knight dates back to 1988. With the success of Hammer's 1994 album, The Funky Headhunter, featuring Dogg Pound, Hammer signed with Death Row Records by 1995, along with Snoop Dogg and his close friend, Tupac. The label did not release the album of Hammer's music, titled Too Tight, while he had a career with them, although he did release versions of some tracks on his next album. However, Hammer did record tracks with Shakur and others, most notably the song Too Late Player along with Big Daddy Kane and Danny Boy. After the death of Shakur in 1996, Burrell left the record company. He later explained his concern about this circumstance in an interview on Trinity Broadcasting Network, since he was in Las Vegas with Tupac the night of his death. Hammer released Tupac's Unconditional Love on his Family Affair album in 1998. The television film Too Legit, the MC Hammer story aired on VH1 in 2001, depicting the friendships between Hammer, played by Romany Malco, Shakur, played by Lamont Bentley, and Knight, played by Anthony Norris. Loss of Dr. Dre and Tupac. The label suffered a major blow when Dr. Dre, frustrated with the company's increasingly thuggish reputation and Knight's violent inclinations, decided to leave and form his own label. A stream of dreading records followed, but things turned tragic in September 1996, when Shakur was murdered in a drive-by shooting in Las Vegas. When Shakur's East Coast rival, the notorious B.I.G., aka Biggie Smalls, was murdered in a similar shooting in March 1997, speculation arose that Knight was involved, and that B.I.G.'s death was a revenge killing, although former Death Row artists like Snoop Dogg would later state that Knight was involved in Tupac's murder as well. Subsequent investigations exposed a web of connections between Death Row Records, gang members who worked there, and LAPD officers who sometimes worked security for the label. Author Randall Sullivan claimed that the majority of clues found by investigators assigned to B.I.G.'s killing pointed directly at Mickey G6's. Mario Hammonds, a convicted felon who shared a cell block with Knight at California Men's Colony in San Luis Obispo, California in the late 1990s, claimed that Knight took credit for the murder, and quoted him as saying, "My people handled the business. They took care of him." No one has been charged in connection with the crime, however, and Knight has denied any involvement. Tupac Shakur's bodyguard, Frank Alexander, produced a documentary about the murder, Tupac Shakur, Before I Wake, in which he stated that it would be inconceivable that Knight, who was the driver of the car in which Tupac was killed, and a large man, would put himself in the path of bullets, if he knew they were coming. In the documentary, Alexander also states that he has no reason to suspect Suge Knight, and that Knight treated the security people very well at all times. In addition, Kathy Scott, who worked closely with the LAPD during her career as a journalist, stated on the same documentary that the LAPD found no evidence whatsoever that implicated Suge Knight. She also said, "You can be sure that, if the LAPD had any evidence that Suge Knight was involved in Tupac's killing, they would have arrested him." Kathy Scott wrote a book entitled The Killing of Tupac Shakur. On a website, entitled Archived Letters, Scott writes back to a fan of her book, stating, "Thanks very much for your note. Your question about Suge Knight, there never was any evidence, or even alleged evidence linking Suge to Tupac's murder in any way, shape, or form. He was never a suspect." The Biggie and Tupac documentary was based solely on one disgruntled ex-cop's theory. He despised Suge, and wanted to see him go down. The book Tupac, A Thug Life, released in 2005, includes the conspiracy theories and controversy surrounding Shakur's murder. In 2006, 9 years after the Biggie Smalls murder, the LAPD formed a task force to finally solve the case. According to its principal investigator, LAPD Detective Greg Kading, and Keith D. Davis, a member of the Crips Street Gang, confessed to riding in the car involved in the Las Vegas drive-by shooting of Tupac Shakur. Keith D. claimed they had been offered $1 million by Puffy Combs for the killing of Tupac and Suge Knight. While in Las Vegas, he and a group of fellow Crips accidentally crossed paths with a limousine carrying both Knight and Shakur. The fatal shots were fired by Orlando Baby Lane Anderson, because he was on the side of the car closest to the limousine. In retaliation, Suge Knight hired Woodall Pouchy Faust to hit Puffy Combs' most valuable star, Biggie Smalls, a hit accomplished following a party at the Peterson Automotive Museum. Pouchy later survived one assassination attempt, but died in a drive-by shooting a year following the first attack. Despite the task force's findings, charges were never brought, and the task force was wound down and disbanded for reasons of internal affairs. After the death of Tupac Shakur and the release of Thug Father, Snoop Dogg openly blasted Suge Knight for the murder of Shakur and decided to leave the label, which he did in 1997, moving to Masterpiece No Limit Records, and then forming his own record label, Doggy Style Records. In 2002, Snoop released the song Pimp Slapped, in which he repudiated Suge and Death Row. In 2006, Snoop again attacked Knight verbally, charging him for the death of Tupac Shakur. End of Death Row Records. On April 4, 2006, Suge Knight filed bankruptcy due to civil litigation against him in which Lydia Harris claimed to have been cheated out of a 50% stake in Death Row Records. Prior to filing, Knight had been ordered to pay $107 million to Harris. Under questioning by creditors, he denied having money tucked away in foreign countries, or in an African company that deals in diamonds and gold. Bankruptcy documents filed showed Knight had no income that year from employment or operation of a business. According to financial records, his bank account contained just $12, and he owned clothing worth $1,000, furniture and appliances valued at $2,000, and jewelry worth $25,000. He also testified that the last time he had checked the label's financial records was at least 10 years prior. Knight's lawyer said that his client was still at the helm of Death Row, and had been working on securing distribution deals for the label's catalog. Harris told reporters she had received a $1 million payment, but had not agreed to settle the matter. "I'm telling you, I didn't do a settlement for $1 million. That's ridiculous. Let's keep it real," she said. Knight skipped a meeting with his creditors after injuring himself in a motorcycle accident. Another scheduled meeting with the creditors had been missed after Suge said he had experienced a death in his family. Finally, on July 7, 2006, the federal judge, Ellen Carroll, ordered a bankruptcy trustee takeover of Suge Knight's Death Row Records, saying the record label had undergone a gross amount of mismanagement. He filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection, which allows a company to continue business operations while restructuring. Death Row was being operated by Nielsen during the bankruptcy proceedings, while Knight oversaw his bankruptcy estate as a debtor in possession. In June 2007, he placed his 7-bedroom, 9-bath home in Malibu on the market for $6.2 million as part of his financial makeover. The mansion was finally sold in December 2008 in bankruptcy court for $4.56 million. In June 2008, he sold Death Row Records to New York-based company Global Music Group, which confirmed it had purchased the firm in a statement to the Associated Press news agency. On January 25, 2009, an auction was held for everything found in the Death Row Records office after the company filed for bankruptcy, including some of Knight's personal items. Of note was the Death Row Records electric chair, which sold for $2,500. Some of Knight's personal items appeared in an auction during the debut episode of Ernie's Storage Wars, and a vault full of items, including a coat, was purchased by featured buyer Barry Weiss. Personal and legal troubles. In 1996, Knight was sent to prison for a probation violation. In 1997, he was sentenced to 9 years for the violation. He was released on August 6, 2001. In 2003, he was sent to prison again for violating parole when he struck a parking lot attendant. Death Row Records' income rapidly declined due to Knight's incarceration. It managed to save itself from complete bankruptcy by releasing archived Snoop Dogg compilation albums and posthumous Tupac albums. Despite signing new artists, Suge never released any of their albums. In 2005, Knight was shot in the leg at the Red Room at Miami Beach's Shore Club. To date, no one has been charged in the shooting. In 2006, Knight was engaged in another dispute with former friend and ex-associate Snoop Dogg, after Snoop insulted him in Rolling Stone. On May 10, 2008, Knight was involved in an altercation involving a monetary dispute outside of a nightclub in Hollywood. He was knocked out for 3 minutes, taken to the hospital, and reportedly did not cooperate with the LAPD. On August 27, 2008, Knight was arrested on drug and aggravated assault charges after leaving a Las Vegas strip club. When police arrived on the scene, Knight was beating Melissa Isaac, his girlfriend of 3 years, and brandishing a knife. Reports also allege that he was under the influence of both ecstasy and hydrocodone. As of October 31, police and prosecutors had still failed to contact Isaac, and no formal charges have been brought against Knight. On December 5, 2008, Suge Knight was cleared of all charges. Knight's attorney, David Chesnoff, said the prosecution had discovery problems and witness problems. Prosecutors Suss and Benedict did not immediately return a call for comment. When Knight was asked about the positive verdict, he replied, "God is good, happy holidays." As part of an October 30, 2008 bankruptcy claim, Suge also filed a lawsuit against Kanye West and his associates. The lawsuit concerns an August 2005 shooting at Kanye's pre-Video Music Awards party, where Knight suffered a gunshot wound to the upper leg. The lawsuit cites damages of mental and physical pain caused by the shooting, costs of surgery, loss of income and the theft of a 15-carat, 3.0 g, $147,000 diamond earring. In late March 2009, Knight was implicated in the robbery of Akin producer, Noel Detail Fisher. According to Christopher Walker, an employee of Detail, on the morning of March 25, 2009, 5 armed men broke into Detail's house, stating that they were collecting a debt on behalf of Knight. $170,000 worth of jewelry was stolen, along with a locked safe, stereo equipment and the key to a Mercedes vehicle. Walker claims the incident is related to the altercation at the W Scottsdale Hotel in February. Knight started a new record label called Blackball Records, with its first artist Young Life, and featured it in a reality show, Unfinished Business. The show was based on Knight dispelling long-standing rumors in sit-down interviews, his days with Death Row and the artists he worked with, and finding new talent for his record label. As of April 2009, the show had not been picked up by any major network. Remaining items from Knight's personal property were auctioned in the first episode of Storage Wars on A&E, which aired on December 1, 2010. On February 8, 2012, Suge Knight was arrested in Las Vegas, Nevada, on prior outstanding traffic warrants, and after police found marijuana in his car. Knight was serving 3 years unsupervised probation for driving with a suspended license at the time of his Las Vegas arrest. On February 24, 2013, an arrest warrant was issued after Knight missed a court date on charges of driving without a license, while on 3 years of unsupervised probation,